All right. Well, welcome to all of you who are joining us today. We're so glad that you're here for our Pratt Advising webinar of our Summer Transition Series. My name is Yana Mitsos. I'm the Assistant Director for New Student and Family Programs here at Duke University, and we're so excited that you've taken some time out of your day to join us. So if you've been part of our previous summer transition webinars, welcome back. And if this is your first time joining us, we host these weekly webinars throughout the summer to get important information directly from the experts in front of students. All of our webinars are recorded, so you can go to our YouTube page or our NSFP website to review past content and register for future ones. Today, we've invited colleagues from the Pratt School of Engineering to answer questions and share insight about all things Pratt Advising related. So before I turn it over to them, I wanted to give you a quick heads up that, like I said earlier, we are going to be recording this and posting it online after we're finished. You'll also see at the bottom of your screen a Q&A button. This is going to be your way of asking questions directly to the panelists. So at the end of the presentation, we're going to go through these questions and answer them for the group. Feel free to drop your questions in this function as we move through content, and we'll answer them at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our Pratt team and let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get into content.
Thanks, Yana. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Duke Engineering webinar. My name is Lupita McMillan. I am one of the academic deans in Pratt, and I'm going to hand it off. We're going to introduce ourselves before we jump off camera and jump into the presentation. So Dean Cook.
Hi, my name is Ben Cook. I'm one of the 3 academic deans in Pratt.
Hi, and I'm Carmen Rolls. I'm the third academic dean from Pratt. Perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Pratt Advising webinar. We are very excited to connect with you. I hope everyone is doing well and is enjoying their summer. Today, we're here to provide you with information that will help you navigate the registration process. After our brief presentation, we will answer all your questions. We understand that some students may have very specific situations they would like to discuss, and those situations will be better answered via an email or a meeting. For that reason, the 3 academic deans, we will be meeting with all of our first-year students through Zoom meetings this summer. During those meetings, we can discuss your course selections for the fall. So please check your Duke email for information on how to schedule those meeting times. So before we begin, we want to introduce you to the undergraduate advising team. We provide student support in many different ways. From left to right, we'll start with our Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education, Professor Lisa Hutel. Then the 3 of us, the academic deans. And on the right are the directors of undergraduate studies of the engineering departments. Our role is to assist you with academic planning and to ensure you satisfy the graduation requirements of your chosen major. Every first-year engineering student is placed in a cohort of peers with layered support to mentor them and to guide them to broader university support. Students' advising network is composed of, first, their academic dean, who will oversee their progress during their time at Duke. Your dean is also the point person to reach out to when you're in need of assistance. The second will be your 360 coach and your advisors. After a few weeks following the start of the fall semester, you will be assigned a faculty advisor called 360 coach that will assist you with the transition during your first year at Duke. One of the roles of faculty advisors is to help students choose their courses for the following semester. Every student is also assigned an E-team peer advisor. Third, students will have a support in choosing their major through consultants in the major and through directors of undergraduate studies. Additional resources available for students include the Wellness Center, the Career Center, the Academic Resource Center, among many others. Now you will ask yourself, who is your academic dean? The name of your academic dean will appear on your Duke Hub, but you can also find the breakdown here on this slide. Dean Cook is going to be the academic dean for engineering students whose last name begins with A all the way through HA. I'll be the advisor academic dean of all the students whose last name begins with HE all through Pi. And Dee McMillian is going to be the academic dean for engineering students whose last name begins with PO all the way through the end of the alphabet. So this is your academic dean for the next 4 years. Now getting ready to register. Let's turn now to see what you tuned in today to find out how you will register for classes and what you will register for. Shopping carts open today, June 2nd. But before you start shopping for classes, there are a few tasks you must complete. First, be sure that you verify and update your personal information on Duke Hub, and that you complete all your first-year questions. Once you have completed those 2 steps, then you can start selecting courses to add to your shopping cart. Second, review the Blue Book and be sure to read the Pratt Learning and Pratt Registration sections carefully. These 2 sections are Pratt specific and hold very different information than the Trinity sections of the same names. In the Blue Book, you will find step-by-step instructions on how to select courses and put them into your shopping cart. Learn how to validate your schedule and eventually register for classes. It is important to note that right now, you're only selecting possible courses and sections for your shopping cart to build a schedule. You will not actually register for these classes until your registration window opens on July 30th. Now I'll let Dean Cook continue.
I'm sharing the screen, so that arrow was mine. I'm going to talk about kind of the fall schedule, and at Duke, a full-time status is 4 classes, 4 credits. Courses at Duke are worth 1 quarter credit, 1 half credit. Most courses are 1 credit, and some rare cases they're 2 credit courses. But you're going to register for 4 1-credit courses and up to a maximum of 4.5 credits in your first semester at Duke. This may be different from your previous experience, and you may think, oh, I can handle more than 4 classes, but we recommend 4 because 4 courses at Duke is going to be a full load. The engineering curriculum is common in the first year, regardless of major, and your placement may be different if you're coming in with AP, IPC, or pre-matriculation credits, but all engineering majors require the same general education courses. Let's see if I can get to the next. Okay. This specific slide refers to most students, including those not in focus. All engineers should take Engineering 101 in the fall semester, and all engineers will take Writing 120 in the spring. All engineers should take math in the fall. If you have no credit, no AP credit, you'll take Math 111. And if you have credit for Math 21, you can register for Math 122L. If you have credit for both Math 21 and 22, which is how we code the AP credit or IPC credit, then you can register for Math 218D-2, which is a linear algebra course. In order to register for 218D-2, you have to have the credit for Math 21 and 22 in Duke Hub. So send your AP scores to the Duke registrar so that they can get processed. For a computing class, if you don't have AP credit for computer science, you should register for Engineering 105L. But if you do have AP credit for computer science or have extensive experience in Java, then you can choose to register for Computer Science 201. And we have a placement test, which we will email you out about to help you decide which of those courses is the right one for you. And then the last course, chemistry. And either of those 2 courses, Engineering 105 or Computer Science 201, will satisfy Pratt's computing requirement. 4th course should be Chemistry 101 DL. If you have AP Chemistry credit, then you could take Chemistry 110, which is honors chemistry, Chemistry 201, which is organic chemistry, or not take chemistry. Options might depend on your potential major or other interests, but some of those options would be taking Bio 201, taking a social science or humanities course, or taking a first-year seminar. And that's a good thing to talk about with your academic dean. Making multiple schedules and the schedule builder tool in Duke Hub can be very helpful. And you should meet with your dean between now and registration, which we've already sent out emails about how to do that. Okay, this slide talks about if you are doing focus. There is one engineering focus, but students who are in focus will register you automatically for 2.5 focus credits. And the global energy focus includes engineering 101, engineering design and communication, which will have a number of engineering 95 FS-02, but that course is engineering 101 and meets in the same space. It's the same course. So you do not also have to register for engineering 101. You will already be registered if you are in the global energy focus cluster. If you're in a different different focus cluster, then AP credit for chemistry and/or math will keep you on track with engineering course prerequisites. But it is not impossible to stay focused without AP credit. So if you don't have AP credits coming in, then you should talk to your academic dean during a dean meeting about how that will affect your first year schedule. Focus students also take 2 courses outside of the focus cluster. And you should choose any 2 of the following courses of math, chemistry, or engineering 101. And this is also something to talk through with your dean during that meeting. Focus students, including those not in Pratt, will also take writing 120 in the spring. Lab course registration. So registration at Duke is a difficult thing to figure out, and it's one of the first things you have to do. So we want to help you with this. One thing to keep in mind is the lab course registration for Pratt labs are not intuitive. Some labs are connected to the class. Engineering 101, Engineering 105, L, Math 111, L. You want those classes where the lab is connected to the class, you will be in the same lab with the students that you're in lecture with. So you might be doing group work both in lab and in lecture. There are other labs where the lab is not connected to the class, like Chemistry 101 DL, Physics 151 or 152 DL. In those classes, the lab is separate from the class, and you might be in a different lecture, a different lab with students in the same lecture or same discussion. So if the course wants you, if the department wants them to be independent, they will create an independent lab section, which is not intuitive. So when you are adding chemistry or in the spring physics, or then you will want to add the lab separately. And sometimes there are 3 parts of the course if there's a discussion and a lab. And those separate labs are designated with an L9, but they are required for the course. Part of your grade is determined by the lab. So if you do not register for the lab, you will not be able to kind of complete the course successfully. This is something that's very helpful to double check. And if you register for the lecture without the lab and then later realize you need to register for the lab, it may be hard to rearrange your schedule and you may have to drop a class that you really wanted to take, for example. Okay, I'll pass it on to Lupita.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how to use your AP credits, your advanced placement, or your IPC, which is international placement credit. And with the appropriate score, those test credits can satisfy certain engineering degree requirements. And it allows you to place into upper level courses. So credit isn't necessary. If you don't have it, it's fine. You're still going to be able to get through the engineering requirements, but it's good to know if you have them going in, because that will impact your course registration. And each department also has slightly different rules, so it's not uniform across the school. So it is important to check those departmental handbooks for the restrictions that each major has. And this is also something you can talk to your academic dean about during our summer meetings. And we'll be able to tell you what those specific rules are. I will note with the handbooks, those are handbooks, not, there's some changes for your incoming class that's happening this fall, but the general requirements are the same. But definitely talk to your academic dean about that. Then also consult the placement websites, placement pages for math. There's a good placement for chemistry. There is guidelines. Dean Cook mentioned the computing survey that we have, and that is actually in your blue book. So if you look in your blue book where it has Engineering 105 as one of the classes you need to take, there's also a link to a survey, and it will also help you determine. The instructor does want all students to take that EGR 105 survey. So take the survey and then you'll get the results at the end on what your appropriate placement should be. So courses in the engineering department do build on each other. So it is important to have the foundation in the prerequisite class before you go on to the next class. So, you know, for instance, Calc 1 is a prerequisite to Calculus 2. Physics E&M is a prerequisite to many different upper level engineering courses that are taken for each major. But just an example. Also, if you use AP credit and you take a course that you don't feel confident in, then you might not gain the foundation in the course material, and then your learning in subsequent classes is going to be impacted. So if you're unsure, definitely look at those placement websites. There's assessments to take to give you an indication of what level you should be registering for. And then also talk to your academic dean if you're uncertain about that also. So making schedule changes, as we mentioned, registration is July 30th, and that means our drop add period begins on July 31st. So that's when you can begin to make changes to your schedule if necessary. We recommend that if you are in 4 classes on July 30th, you've got what you needed, that you stay there. Classes are very tight and it's hard to move around sometimes. So some of the circumstances where we would say that you need to change your class is if your placement changes. Maybe your AP credit wasn't in on time and you couldn't register for the appropriate course. Now you have your AP credit and you can register for the upper level course that you needed. So that would be an instance where you would change your schedule. Perhaps there's open seats that are now available. You can change your schedule then. But we really caution you about changing your schedule if you just want different times, because that can be hard to do, and then you might get locked out of a class. Drop add goes through the end of 2 weeks into the semester. So semester will begin, and then there's 2 more weeks of drop add. So those are also times when students can make changes to your schedule. Your dean will be available to help you throughout the summer. We all send out our emails. Hopefully check your Duke email. If you haven't already, make an appointment with your academic dean, and we will have a summer Zoom appointment with you to go over all of these requirements and make sure that you are in the classes that you need. So the summer advising, as I mentioned, we'll be advising all summer long up until registration on July 30th. So look at that Duke email. And there's here are email addresses, and we have a general pratt-advising@duke.edu email. You can also send your questions to. At various times during the summer, we are going to be out on summer vacation. So our away message will always direct students to that Pratt Advising, and we'll have someone answering that question, that email box all summer long. It's best to start with your academic dean, but if we're out, go to that Pratt-Advising email address and we'll get your question answered. We also have some of our engineering student organizations doing some Zoom advising over the summer. They are experts because they have registered. They know how to use Duke Hub. They know how to build a schedule with Schedule Builder. So if you have questions like that that you want to talk to them about, maybe you have questions about campus life, what to bring, life in the residence hall, life as an engineering student, they are great resources for that. And so they're going to do some peer advising Zoom drop-in on July 15th through the 17th. And we'll send an email out closer to that date. So keep an eye on that Duke email. We'll send you information about that advising time with a Zoom link as well. And then they will also send you information, our engineering student government, ESG, they'll be recruiting first year representatives. So from the class of 29, they need representatives on the engineering executive board to help represent your class. Hey, finally, we just want to make sure follow us on at Pratt Deans on Instagram. We don't put a lot out there, but we will put messages out, important deadline dates, reminders. If there's social activities, we'll put some information out there. So follow us. We'd love to have you tagging us in your photos, everything. We'd love that interaction on our social media page. And then now I'd like to just open it up to any questions. I will say if you have a very specific question about your very specific situation of, pre-college credits or dual enrollment situations or very specific things about your academic situation, contact your academic dean directly. Right now, we're going to do general overall questions that we can answer.
Awesome. So we can go ahead and get started. The first question is there a placement exam for 122L for those who do not have AP credits?
Yes, there is the Math 122Ls, which I assume you mean. Yes, so the math department has a placement exam that you can sign up for. That particular placement exam is like in person, you have to take it. But I think it's the Saturday before classes start, or that weekend, typically. And that information is on the Math Art website, which I can put in the chat. Can I answer them in the chat? Oh.
I'll also just add to that, if a student does take the math placement website or math placement test, and they are granted that they're able to skip to Math 218D-2, that would be the next class in the sequence. If you test out of 122, you're still required to take 5 math classes with your AP credits and what you take post-matriculation. So if you are allowed to skip Math 122, you're still going to have a math class to take after you finish our sequence. So skipping Math 22 doesn't mean now you only have 4 math classes required. You still have 5 math classes. You'll just have to tack another additional class on at the end of our sequence.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, our next question is, in registering for classes, what is the difference between a DL class like Chem 101 DL versus an L class like EGR 101L?
Well, I tried to explain this during the presentation, but the L classes like EGR 101L, you will be in class for like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, twice a week. And one of the sections is the lecture and the other section is the lab, but really they're just the same thing twice a week. And we want you with your group all the time. So you're going to be in the same lecture and lab with the same people, right? Chemistry 101, the labs there have 7 hoods and there are 14 students in those labs, and the lecture may have 200 students or 100 students. But the 14 student lab, it doesn't matter which lecture you're in for the lab. So they're separated by, like, you don't register, they may be co-required, so you might have to register for both, but you don't have to connect, like the people in the lab don't have to be the same as the people in the lecture and the people in the discussion. So they're listed as separate individual courses. And you have to add them separately in Schedule Builder.
And I think the DL means there's a discussion also. So the DL means a discussion and a lab. So Chem 101 DL is a lecture, lab, a discussion. And then the L means there's a lab. So the EGR 101, as Ben Cook was explaining, has a lab. Math 111 has a lab. Some of those labs you have to register for, and others are separate. So like the chemistry, that's completely separate. So don't forget to include that lab. The classes Dean Cook mentioned, the EGR 101, the Math 111, they're connected to each other. So you can't make the mistake of not registering for one and not the other.
Great. Thank you. For someone who is currently a Trinity student, is there a procedure or steps that they need to take in order to join Pratt before the school year starts?
So you can't join Pratt now before the school year starts. If you are a Trinity student, or vice versa, if you're a Pratt student and want to transfer to Trinity, if you're a Trinity student and want to transfer to Pratt, you need to stay in your school through the fall semester. And then there is a process that's very easy. It really just requires a meeting with your academic dean at this point in time, being a first semester student. You meet with your academic dean and we will talk to you about the process, which will happen after that fall semester is over. So you can start your spring semester in the other school that you desire. If you're a Pratt student, you can take any classes that you need to meet Trinity requirements. We won't require you to stay in Pratt classes and take our Pratt classes in the fall. You're free to take whatever you want. And if you're a Trinity student coming in, we will advise you on what would be the best classes to take so that you are able to do a seamless transfer into Pratt. But you can contact that Pratt-advising email, or let your academic dean know during your summer advising meeting. Either one of those two, you can notify us.
Awesome. So for international students who have taken courses similar to like an A-level math class, are they able to take Math 122L or 218D-2?
Yes, there is a list on the registrar's website about like which so you can talk to your dean about this. You can also, the registrar has some information on their website about this. And I'll try to post that also in the answer for the Q&A.
And then I see a couple questions about registration, the timing of that. Do people need to be on right away at 12 p.m.? Is it first come, first serve? What does that look like?
It is. So the registration will open for everyone at noon Eastern time. So it will be first come, first serve. So I would recommend that students have in their shopping carts already all the course selections of their ideal schedule. So they are ready to hit submit and enroll in classes as soon as registration window opens.
Great, thank you. Would a MacBook Pro purchased through the Technology Center, would that be a suitable piece of equipment for a biomedical engineering major?
So there is no specific recommendation of PC or Mac. Programs are able to run on either computer, and sometimes you have to use the Duke VPN to run some of the software, but either will work. Certainly anything bought in our Duke Bookstore Technology Center would meet the minimum guidelines of what's recommended. So yeah, that any major either platform is fine.
That might also be a good question to ask some other students. We have some generic recommendations for computers. And if you're like, I know BME students who have both Macs and PCs, and I think they both are happy. But there are certain programs that run better on one machine than the other. And like, talking to students about that can be more helpful than the kind of generic advice we have.
Great. And then I see a couple questions about the first year questions. So can you talk a little bit more about the first year questions? Are they required prior to meeting with you all, and how are they used? Are they used to determine if a student is a good fit for a class? What does that look like?
So they are not required before we meet with our students during the summer and discuss course selections for the fall, but they will be required before you can register for classes on July 30th. So I recommend completing all those steps as early as possible so that you don't have any delays during registration day. And no, they're not considered, they don't affect which class you will be taking this fall.
They're more of a tool to use so that anyone who advises you just has a little bit of an idea of your background or what you're interested in. Academic deans will look at it, your faculty advisor will look at it. You'll have a 360 coach who is your faculty advisor in your first year. When you get assigned a faculty advisor in your major in your second year. So they're just a nice introduction to you when your advisor first meets you.
Great, thanks. Are students allowed to take E&M this fall if they already have credit for chemistry and mechanics?
Electricity and magnetism, it depends on where you are in math. If you're, we strongly recommend that students take multivariable calculus at the same time or before electricity and magnetism. So it is possible, yes. There is some room in 152, and we do have some first year students that take that in the fall, but it is not, it's not your only option for that class, and you probably want to, all the other students in there will be sophomores. And so like you would want to make sure you're really comfortable with physics to jump into that in your first semester.
Yeah, I think this is one situation that would be ideal to discuss your full course selections with your academic dean, because during the conversation you can discuss what is your preference of your major, and they can provide you with an alternative that would be better suited for your first semester.
Great, thank you. So this one says the math department's website says students can place out of multivariable calculus even without pre-matriculation credit. Can Pratt students do that?
Not really. Every situation is different. So this would be a question to meet with your academic dean. We have a criteria that we use to refer students to the math department to get further assessment. So it's not just a conversation and then permission is granted. It's a lot more discussion and assessment that's done if that is something that's appropriate.
Great. And I do see a lot of questions about AP credits. Maybe we can just talk a little bit more generally, or if we want to drop a link in the chat. One though that I think might be pretty general. For college courses taken in high school, can you explain the process of how they're approved as pre-matriculation credits so that we can skip to the next class? The math sequence is an example. Who will be checking the syllabus in the math department or Pratt, and how will that class show up in Duke Hub?
The math department will check that, and the registrar also has a process for that. It sounds like you've seen that process on the registrar's website, but you send it through the registrar, and then the registrar will contact the math department to assess the syllabus, and then it'll show up. So we have like for AP credit or IPC credit, it's like math 21 and 22 are the like numerical codes that we use to indicate AP credit. For different types of pre-matriculation credit, there might be other numbers. I think it's 121 and 122, maybe for calculus 1 and calculus 2, or one. So there's some other numbers that the math department uses that are different from the course numbers. And yeah, and I can also, if you look for pre-matriculation credit in the registrar, there's a link there.
Yes, I included the link on the chat so that everyone can refer to them and experience the process on AP credits and also pre-matriculation credits.
Great.
Yeah, I have a couple things to add as well. If you haven't already requested your AP credit to get sent to the Duke registrar, then you should do that ASAP. If you sent it with your admissions application, that doesn't get transferred to the registrar's office. So you'll need to make sure that you have requested that that those scores get sent. There are some classes, particularly math, that you cannot register for the appropriate math class unless your credit is on your Duke record. So make sure that has happened. And then with the pre-matriculation credit, it is also important to start that process right away. If you have college credit that you want to get evaluated for pre-matriculation credit, do that ASAP. Unfortunately, it's not a quick process because the registrar does facilitate it, and then they need to go to the department for them to evaluate it. And folks are on vacation, folks are gone, so it's not a quick process, unfortunately. I would start that as soon as possible so that everything is done by the time you need to know to register on July 30th.
Great. Thank you all. Are students able to participate in constellations if they're in Pratt?
No. There's no wiggle room with that, we're told. So that is not something that Pratt students can participate in.
Awesome. And then is it possible to complete the engineering course requirements if you are participating in a non-engineering focus?
Yes, it's definitely possible, and we have students that do focus, the non-engineering focus every year. Talking through how to meet the kind of other first year requirements with your academic dean is really helpful, so you understand like how to get in the prerequisite courses so that you're ready to take like sophomore courses. But yeah, we definitely have students do focus every year that don't do the engineering focus, the entity focus.
Thank you. Regarding foreign language, will first year students be able to take foreign language classes within their first semester, or is it recommended to start taking those beginning second semester or even later on? Is this the case with other liberal arts courses that are required?
So there is no language requirement for Pratt students. So if you're asking because you think you need to fulfill a language requirement, we do not have a language requirement. However, you can take a language and it could satisfy your liberal arts requirement here. So we do encourage students to take a language. There's not a lot of room in the first year. So if a student does take a language, it's likely not going to be until either spring semester as an overload, taking 5 classes instead of 4, or sophomore year opens up a little bit of space where students can begin taking any liberal arts courses, whether they are language or any other liberal arts.
Great, thank you. Another AP question. If someone's planning to send their scores, should they send their scores this year or wait until, sorry, I read this wrong. So should they wait until they get their scores from this year, or should they send what they currently have? Does that make a difference in how they're placed? I guess depending on the score.
So there should be enough time after, I think scores come out kind of in early July, before July 30th to send your scores, like after this year's scores come out. Duke will be processing, potentially 1,700 sets of scores at the registrar, and there are kind of technical things to kind of keep in mind. Two students might have the same name, and then there's ID, so it's not like a fully seamless process for every student. So it is worth following up and making sure that your scores have been recorded properly, and that you can see in Duke Hub under course history. You should see your registration, your AP scores come up as like Duke coded classes. And if you don't see that, it's helpful to either follow up with your dean or follow up with the registrar. The registrar is the group that processes.
Yeah, and so for a lot of these AP questions that are coming in, I just want to put as a reminder, there is a section in your blue book that should link out to the registrar's website, but also give you more information on this. And so you can look at that, read through it, and then bring those questions that you have that are specific to you and your situation to your dean. We do have a question about, could you explain more about the shift from 5 humanities requirements to 5 liberal arts requirements and how that will affect planning for first years?
So it won't affect your planning at all. As I mentioned, Pratt students don't usually take liberal arts courses until the second year. And the reason for the shift is because the Trinity curriculum changed this year. And so the courses that we called social science and humanities courses, they were all Trinity courses, all Trinity codes that they used. And so since Trinity just changed their curriculum and changed their codes, we followed suit because we take their classes for that requirement. So it's still 5 and it's still roughly about the same types of categories. So there's not much of a change other than a name change for us.
Great, thank you. And then as a follow-up to the foreign language question, are Pratt students able to qualify for study abroad semesters, or will they have to wait until semester 3 to take language prereqs for study abroad?
So our students don't have any problems qualifying for study abroad programs. And when they can start taking the language requirements will depend on specific situation of the student. But in certain cases, if during the first year, which is very likely, if they have to wait until the second year to take classes, that would still should not be a problem. And they can start looking at all the requirements on the Global Education Office. They can start becoming familiar with the different programs and opportunities. But like I said, our students really have no problems studying abroad.
Thanks. And then, is it possible to start taking major specific courses your freshman year if you meet all of the prereqs and co-reqs?
Yes,
But-
in the spring, one of the courses, in the typical path is a major specific course. So typically that would be in the spring of your first year. You would take a different course for each major.
And then, is there a procedure to overload classes in your first or second semester of the first year?
Not in the first semester, there isn't. All Duke students are held at the 4.5 credit limit. But certainly in the spring semester of your first year, students are allowed to register for 5 classes. And they can do that once drop add begins. So during your window, everyone is only allowed 4.5 credits to register. And then beginning in your spring semester, you could add a 5th credit once the drop add period begins.
Right. And then with this curriculum change in Trinity, do you think that this will make things harder to switch from Pratt to Trinity or vice versa?
That's a great question. We don't know yet. Trinity, the constellation requirements are set for their students. So I think it's important to contact your academic dean if that's what you want to do. And I think it's going to be a learning experience for us, and we will help consult with our Trinity counterparts to see how to best advise you. We do know Trinity students, if you do want to transfer to Pratt, you are still required to take your constellations. And we know Pratt students who do intend to transfer to Trinity are not allowed to take constellations while they're still a Pratt student. If they transfer after that first semester, in that spring semester, they can certainly take the constellation courses that they need to. But we'll work with students. I don't think anyone's going to be penalized. So I think it's just going to be a lot of conversation with our counterparts to see how to best advise those students.
And there are some constellations with, like, Pratt students will all be taking Writing 120 in the spring. And Trinity the constellations, some students will be taking Writing 120 in the fall, and some will take Writing 120 in the spring. It might be a better fit to be in a constellation that has Writing 120 in the spring if you're a Trinity student planning to transfer to Pratt, so that you aren't taking 2 courses in the fall that, like, you could still take 3 kind of like math and maybe engineering 101 or 105 and chemistry, or like 3 of those 4 classes in the fall. But yes, we are, it'll be a learning process for us as well.
Great. How will mandatory ROTC military science courses affect registration for a Pratt student?
We work with a lot of ROTC students in Pratt, and there are sometimes semesters that students have conflicts that we have to work to help resolve. It typically doesn't affect first semester student schedules that significantly. There are a number of sections of chemistry, there are a number of sections of math, there are a number of sections of engineering 101. And so it's the conflicts we've had in the past have maybe sophomore, spring semester, or different like kind of individual semester when it's affected a number of students. But we have found ways to kind of resolve those when they arise.
Great. And then is there a difference between DIS and LEC? And is there ever a situation where you would advise someone to pick one versus the other?
You need both. Yes, there is a difference. Well, DIS means discussion, and that's like typically a smaller, 30 student or less class, and LEC means a lecture. And those codes stand for the type of class and the lecture is usually bigger. In the case of chemistry, it could be, 100 to 200 students. But yes, those are like lecture, discussion, lab, seminar, SEM. There's a number of kind of shortenings for different types of classes.
And then, let's see. A lot of these are registrar questions. Does Duke accept credits from IB Physics HL? Is that something that, would go through the registrar or through you all?
I don't believe Duke accepts Physics HL anymore. There was a point in time when the exam changed, and so they no longer met the Duke equivalent. So if it's not on the table on that registrar link that was sent, and I don't think it is, no, there's no Physics IB credits granted here.
Great, thank you. And then I think we have time for maybe a couple more questions, but does it make sense to register for the same class at multiple times with different professors, or to get on as many wait lists as possible?
No. You can only, the system will only allow you to register for one section for one class. So if you join a second wait list after being registered, thinking maybe you could switch if you get off the wait list, you will never be able to do so. Once you register for the class, the system will not allow you to register for a second section.
And then, are you able to use AP credits to fulfill the Pratt Social Science and Humanities requirement?
No. Our students will have to take a minimum of 5 liberal arts classes to fulfill the Pratt requirements.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I'm not seeing any more questions come in, so I think that concludes our Q&A. But I just wanted to tell you all thank you for being here. Thank you to our panelists for giving an amazing presentation, answering questions. Again, please reach out if you all have questions. Your deans are here to help you. And if you have questions that are orientation related, any like onboarding questions, feel free to reach out to NSFP. We're here to help. And if we don't know the answer, we will direct you to someone who does. But thank you all for being here. And our next webinar is going to be next week. Well, we have one tomorrow. It's about constellations and everything Trinity related. And then next week, we'll have our colleagues from Student Health joining us to talk about immunizations, health insurance, and nutrition. So we hope to see you all there. But yeah, have a great Monday, everyone.
Thank